In every part of Hong Kong's busy streets, there is a corner where dreams and shadows meet, a place where hope struggles to breathe, and the smallest spark can either light a fire or burn everything to ashes. This is where David's story begins, a story that shows how one life, lost too soon, can change the hearts of many. David was just 20 years old, but the heavy weight of the world pressed down on his young shoulders. He lived in one of Hong Kong's crowded neighborhoods, where the traffic never stopped and the city's noise filled every moment. People rushed past him every day, barely noticing the young man in worn clothes with eyes full of quiet wishes. David never caused trouble, but he was invisible, like a shadow moving along the busy streets of Mong Kok, always there but always alone. David's mother worked long hours at a small market stall in Sham Shui Po, selling fruits and dried goods to feed David and his little sister. They lived in a cramped, aging apartment near Kowloon City, where the rain seeped in through cracked windows and the wind howled down narrow alleys. Every day, David dreamed of a better life, a future where his sister could go to school without worry, where hunger would not empty his belly, and where his mother's smile would come easily. One unlucky evening, as the orange sun began to set behind the tall skyscrapers of Central, David was asked by a local shopkeeper near Yau Ma Tei to deliver a small package to a man across the street. It was a simple job, just like many he had done before. But that night, something dark waited for him. As David crossed Nathan Road, the man on the other side shouted, "Stop! That package is stolen. You're the thief." His voice cut through the evening noise. People turned quickly, eyes burning with anger and suspicion. The package slipped from David's hands, falling to the sidewalk with a soft thud. The crowd closed in, murmurs growing into whispers and then shouts. "Look at him, always lurking in the shadows. Don't trust him. He's a troublemaker." David's heart pounded loud in his chest. "I'm not a thief," he pleaded, but no one seemed to hear. The crowd was deaf to his truth. Hands grabbed at him while voices screamed insults. Stones began to fly, one striking him hard on the cheek, burning like fire against his skin. David ducked, shielding his face as best he could, but the blows kept coming. A cruel fist crashed into his ribs, forcing him to the hard, dusty ground. He gasped painfully for breath. "Mama," he whispered, clutching his side, tears wetting his face. From a distance came the faint cry of his sister, but no one stopped. Blinded by anger, feet stomped over David, voices drowned his desperate cries. Then darkness took over. Silence fell heavy and cold across the street. But soon, a soft voice broke through. The shopkeeper's daughter, eyes wide with shame, confessed, "The package wasn't stolen. I took it. I was scared." The crowd froze, regret washing over every face. David lay still, his breath gone forever. Days and nights melted into one another, but the pain clung to the city like thick fog. David's mother sat silently in their small apartment near Kowloon City, clutching his worn-out shoes, whispering his name into the empty rooms. Strange things began to happen around the neighborhood. Lights flickered with no cause. Whispered voices floated through the back alleys of Sham Shui Po. Shadows moved where there should only be stillness. At midnight, soft voices called out with longing, "Mama, please." One by one, those who had harmed David fell ill. Fear gripped the community, and the village elders called for a special ceremony in Victoria Park, a time to honor David and ask for forgiveness. The streets filled with mournful drums and flickering candlelight. David's mother wept openly, her hands shaking as she touched David's empty bed. Then, in the darkest hour, a figure appeared, a tall shadow with sad eyes. The voice rumbled like soft thunder, "I was innocent. I only wanted to live." The crowd shed tears. "We are sorry, David," they cried. The shadow vanished with the wind, and peace returned slowly. Months went by, but the city did not forget. They built a small garden in Kowloon City where David's footsteps once echoed, planting flowers that bloomed like hope. Far away, a young writer named John, also 20 years old, found David's journal buried in a pile of trash near a quiet market street in Sham Shui Po. The pages were filled with dreams of school, love, and laughter that David had never lived to chase. John carried the journal everywhere, reading aloud late at night and sharing the stories with neighbors in hushed tones. Soon, a small group gathered, children who had lost hope, parents burdened by their own struggles, even shopkeepers who once doubted David. With every reading, David's voice grew louder, not as a ghost to fear, but as a light to guide. John began organizing meetings under the old city bridge near Mongkok, inviting those who felt invisible to come together. They called themselves the Light Bearers, a promise to carry forward David's dream of kindness and justice. Word spread beyond the narrow streets of Kowloon and Sham Shui Po. Local schools invited John and the Light Bearers to share David's story. Teachers used the lessons of judgment and forgiveness to help students understand the power of truth and empathy. The story of a young man with patched clothes became a powerful reminder that hunger and poverty do not make a person guilty, and every voice deserves to be heard. David's mother, once crushed by sorrow, found new strength in the movement. She began visiting schools, sharing what she wished she had said sooner. Listen before you judge. Love before you accuse. Her soft, trembling voice moved many hearts, turning pain into courage. But not everyone was ready to remember with kindness. Some in the community still whispered, too afraid to face the guilt. A few even tried to erase David's memory, saying the past was best forgotten. But the garden in Kowloon City bloomed untouched, a living symbol of hope, and the light bearers' voices grew stronger. One rainy evening, John stood in the garden, David's journal open in his hands. Rain mixed with tears falling quietly down his face. "David," he whispered, "we're not alone anymore. Your story is changing lives." Suddenly, a gentle breeze stirred the pages. John looked up, catching a glimpse of a boy with eyes so familiar. It was as if David himself was standing there, smiling quietly from the shadows. That night, John dreamed of David walking through the streets of Hong Kong, not as a shadow, but as a light, leading many others out of darkness. Years passed. John grew into a strong, kind man, known for speaking up for those without a voice. Schools included David's story in their lessons. The city held an annual day in his honor, and David's mother found herself smiling more often, knowing her son's life, though short, had touched countless hearts. But the greatest change was within the people themselves. They learned fear and anger destroy, but compassion and truth build. They understood that one cruel moment should never be the last word on a person's story. David's story was not just about a young man lost too soon. It was about the side of humanity that refuses to give up. It was a reminder that shadows fade when we choose to carry the light.